Well, good afternoon. Welcome to the September 24, 2018 specially called meeting work session of the Board of Commissioners. We have three items on the agenda this afternoon. So we'll start with Community Development is going to make a presentation on recommendations to the county code. Dana, if you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dana Johnson, Cobb County Community Development. I hope all is doing well today. This is the final round of code amendments for 2018. And this is the work session presentation. I'll go over all of the codes, and then we'll have the same presentation tomorrow night for our first public hearing as it relates to these particular codes. This code section has some changes to Chapter 2, Administration, Chapter 50, the Environment, Chapter 54, Fire Prevention and Protection, Chapter 58, Floods, 122, which is Utilities, and 134, which is in Zoning. Getting into the actual code changes, the first one under Chapter 2 deals with film permits. And the purpose of this is to actually add some language within the purpose statement for why we have a film permit process as it relates to the different costs that go into our overall what we are charging for as it relates to the film permit. That was not in our code previously, and this is just making it clear what the costs are that go into the processing of film permits or getting film activity to occur here in Cobb County and throughout Georgia. The second one, Chapter 50, 50-52, this deals with the violation section of the Chattahoochee River Corridor Tributary Protection Area. This coincides with the MERPA process, the Metropolitan River Protection Act process that we do on a regular basis. And what this particular code section does is strengthen our violation ability a little bit. There have been some cases in the past where we have educated people about the presence of a buffer on a protected buffer, and consequently have gone through and they have removed trees from the protected buffer. What this code section will do is allow us to put immediate stop work order on the process, on the project, as well as not allow the contractor to obtain any additional permits from Cobb County until the actual recompense has occurred on that property, where they replant in areas that it's necessary. Next is Chapter 54, Fire Prevention and Protection. This is from the Fire Marshal, and this deals with some operational permits. This is going to be a larger change probably in the coming months as they are working to kind of expand upon special events and expositions and things of that nature. But this is really just putting a foothold in our fire prevention and protection section to allow them and to make correlations between the providing of these operational permits and the codes and standards that the county ensures and maintains in the process of approving these. Chapter 58, Floods. There is a alteration to the definition of lowest floor to have it be in compliance with FEMA and other federal government definitions. And in Chapter 58-32, this is actually removing some language. The way that it would read now is this deals with the lands which are applicable to the flood ordinance. And this would make it clear that all properties in unincorporated Cobb County would be subject to the ordinance requirements in Chapter 58. So it removes some exclusionary language that was in there. 58-70 deals with general standards for construction within flood zones. This deals with improvements of existing structures, new residential structures, and substantial improvements of non-residential structures. And this just makes it very clear that any of these improvements would need to occur with compliance to 5866, 5867, and 5869, which are the standards in the code that define how you build or refit structures within flood-prone areas. It also takes a federal requirement as it relates to construction and how high you have to build over a mean flood level in order to where the lowest level floor of construction would be. Under Chapter 122, which is utilities, this deals with discharge violations, and this just kind of removes some language that was previously in our code where basically removing the language classified as major or minor as defined herein. So it just basically says that all of these shall be enforced as follows without any exclusions. In zoning in Chapter 134, we have definitions. The first one is to add brewpubs to the definition of eating and drinking establishments. Brewpubs are a little bit different because they both manufacture and they have a restaurant. So this is just making it clear that places like Gordon Biersch or things like that would be considered eating and drinking establishments under this code. And that is in line with Georgia Department of Revenue definitions and standards as well. Under RM12, this was a request from the board during one of the zonings this past year, where we had a zoning request for an RM12 development, where they kind of did a new version, which is called detached townhomes, which is detached structures that are very close together. And after that zoning, there were a number of variances that were provided under that zoning. Two of the commissioners at that point in time asked staff to come back and develop standards that would authorize that to occur without numerous variances going through the process. So this is our attempt in order to address the board's request for that. There are a couple items in here that I would like to bring notice to by the board. One is we are removing the not to exceed 5 units per acre for attached and detached residential dwelling, which was previously in the code. Since you are allowed to do 12 units per acre multifamily in this area, it shouldn't really be that far-fetched to allow up to that for detached as well, or attached single-family owned structures. We did add a provision in here where if the developer so choose to incorporate some workforce housing into their development, that they would be enabled to obtain a density bonus as part of that. There is a minimum house size for the attached and detached units. And there are some specific setback requirements contained herein. The reason why the setbacks are in there is because the setbacks for the overall RM12 are really put together for an apartment complex. And if we're going to really do this as a more urban style attached or detached dwelling unit, then we need to have setbacks that would allow for that to occur. So this would incorporate a 20-foot perimeter buffer around the property when it is adjacent to single-family residentially zoned properties. There would be a 15-foot setback required against a public roadway. However, if they did rear entry garages, those could get pushed up right to the roadway to have a 0 setback if they do rear entry garages. The minimum setback between buildings would be 5 feet. If it is anything less than 5 feet, they'll need to comply with the standards of the International Building Code, which requires firewalls and a lack of intrusions in that particular wall in order to create some fire safety requirements as part of this for structures that are that close together. And when is less than 10 feet between structures, utility meters would need to be in the back of the building so that they're not in the front and they're not too hard to access in the side yards. And lastly, and this is usually the case, that any of these setbacks can be adjusted by the Board of Commissioners on a case-by-case basis as you are going through your process for consideration of rezoning requests. And lastly, staff is making a recommendation to reduce the PVC required contiguous acres from 50 acres to 20 acres. And with that, Commissioners, I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have about any of these. And if not, I'm sure we can cover them again tomorrow night.
I have a couple.
Sure.
Why are we allowing anything in a floodplain?
Because people already have property rights. If I own a piece of property and I have a building in a floodplain, there is nothing that stops me from utilizing that particular piece of property. If something is going through the zoning process, certainly at that point in time, the Board of Commissioners has all the right to dictate where and how development on that particular property would occur. But if it's just a single lot of record, and someone came in for a permit, we wouldn't be required to provide them a permit to build. What these requirements do is provide some very specific language that tries to really impart safety into the construction process by removing it out of the flood zone as much as possible.
Well, and then what would be our liability for granting that?
There really wouldn't be any liability to the county. That would be based upon the individual property owner's liability, and certainly that would be required because they would need to obtain flood insurance and things of that nature if they were doing any construction like that. And if I'm not mistaken, I think these standards, all the stuff from water came from the North Georgia Water Planning District, which were kind of set down as requests for us to consider as part of that.
Okay, but now we do look at that in zoning, but if someone builds as is currently zoned and they're in a floodplain, they can do that now.
That's correct, ma'am.
Okay, and then we have RM12 for multifamily. We also have R12 for residential,
Yes,
single
ma'am.
family.
Yes, ma'am.
So explain, Dana, please, explain the difference or what this new category will, what that changes.
Yes, Commissioner. A lot of it deals with the density that would be allowed as part of it. The R12 is residential detached, 12,000 square foot lots. There's
Right.
43,560 square feet in an acre. So it would be about 3.75-ish units per acre developed under the R12 zoning district. The RM12, residential multifamily 12 units per acre, would really only be authorized in areas where the RM12 can occur, which generally is the regional activity centers and the HDR, future land use categories. And the RM12 would allow up to 12 units per acre detached or attached residential dwelling units.
All right.
So there would be about a difference of about 7 units per acre allowed in the RM12 versus the R12.
But you're making RM12 single family as well,
That is
with a higher density.
That is correct. And a lot of that is because we've seen a lot of really fantastic developments in Smyrna and Marietta where they're doing this detached townhome concept, where they are like a townhome, except the only difference between a townhome and this is that they're literally separated by a little bit of space. So this code change would allow that to occur in unincorporated Cobb County without requiring a number of variants to the regular normal R12 zoning category. RM12 zoning category, excuse me.
How many units do you put on an RSL per acre?
Depends on the type of where it's located, sir. If it's in like a low-density residential future land use category, you can have up to 5 units per acre. And then as you get into your more intense developments, areas, it can increase along with that, sir.
Mr. Chairman,
Sure.
I think the biggest difference between the existing RM12 and what's being proposed, and we had a zoning that showed this last time, RM12 and without this change has X number of units that you can allow, basically up to 12 units per acre. What this allows is no more density. It just allows you to kind of take those and break them apart into individual units. And we saw that in a zoning a couple months back. And what happened a couple months back, there was a whole bunch of variances because now you have things closer, but it was not any more units. And so this is coming as a result to allow that kind of development that doesn't allow more units than RM12, but it just allows them to be kind of broken apart into individual units.
Wouldn't the lot sizes be smaller though?
Yes, sir. These would be smaller lot sizes
Much smaller.
compared to the R12, which Commissioner Burrow was talking
Well, I'm
about.
talking about the RM12 are like townhomes.
The RM12
could
would
be
be
an apartment.
more like apartments, sir.
Yeah, right. But now we're gonna allow RM12 to be detached.
Yes, sir.
So that must, but you're on the same size lot, you know, so that means the houses themselves have to be smaller.
Correct.
Okay.
And if you look, when you drive in to the square here, what's being built right
Right.
off the square, that's an
Right.
example. Those are probably a little bit bigger and wider than what would be built. But, basically, it's the same number of units. It's just you're allowing them to be kind of separated apart.
And we don't mandate the size, the floor space sizes, do we?
There is a minimum in this code request, and I think it's 950 square feet. Is the minimum house size, which is a pretty small house.
But that's the same size. I mean, we have apartments that are between
Right.
700 and 900 square feet.
It just gives you some flexibility. I don't know, I don't want to live in a
Why would you
900.
want 2 feet
It
between
just, that is a product that people are looking to buy.
A great example of this is if you go down to the Belmont redevelopment in Smyrna, is a great example of the exact kind of house that would be authorized with this type of code request.
Those are
You're in a
900,
city.
and those are 950 roughly?
Well, they're
Those are a little
3
larger,
stories.
actually.
Those are like 3 or 4 stories tall.
They
Yeah,
are.
and they're gonna be multiple stories.
Yes.
Oh, I see, okay,
Yeah,
got it.
it would be vertical.
Yeah, so it's like building vertical townhomes or vertical apartments and just allowing them to be apart. The whole reason this came about was the zoning that the board approved. There was a lot of questions because under the existing RM12, you're gonna have a lot of variances because you're gonna have, wider distance between them, you're gonna have the smaller lots, you're gonna have smaller setbacks. And so this is not a way for a developer to get more density, it's just a matter of a way to get them separated apart.
Sure. Well, it also responds to a different demographic today, where they want to live closer to a square like here, or near a trail like in Smyrna. So you allow them, in order to give them the opportunity to live in those kind of areas, you just build smaller houses.
Well, it also allows ownership.
Right, exactly.
Whereas, a typical RM12, like an apartment style, that's gonna be rent, whereas this would allow ownership.
Okay, all right.
And they still have to be an HDR overlay.
Yeah, the RM12 zoning category is authorized in the high-density residential and regional activity center future land use categories.
Okay.
So that wouldn't change as far as the way that staff would look at recommendations coming forward to the board when zonings come through.
Any other questions? Okay, thanks, Dana.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
I guess you still stay with us. Now you're gonna lead us in discussion on purpose-built student housing analysis.
Yes, sir. And before we get going, I want to thank a lot of our staff members who did an absolutely fantastic job in working with us. And we have a number of people who have come to join us from the community as well to hear this particular presentation. First of all, Mandy Elliott, Jay Northrup, and Jason Gaines are the 3 staff individuals that have been diligently working on this, and I wanted to thank them for their hard work and dedication. We also have Daryl Simmons from the city of Kennesaw, and Tracy, as everybody knows, no last name required, from the Town Center CID. And I don't know if we have anyone from the foundation or from KSU here, and I don't think we do, but they both were invited to attend as well. Oh, okay. From Kennesaw State. Excellent. We do have someone from Kennesaw State here. Thank you, ma'am. With that, I'm going to jump in real quick. We're going to kind of go through the context of what we're talking about, provide you some definitions, talk about some previous studies that were done, and then really jump into the heart of this particular analysis. So the context of this is a challenging situation because off-campus student housing is really a challenge for the overall community. Off-campus student housing kind of comes in 3 different ways. You have regular apartments that people just rent. You have people who go into established single-family neighborhoods and convert single-family homes to rentals or family purchases with multiple college students. And then you have this newer type, which is the purpose-built student housing, which is like a private version of dorms. When you mix students and family housing together, as we're seeing in areas around Kennesaw State, the university and the county receives a lot of complaints about noise and parking and overcrowding and property maintenance. At the same time, over the past several years, KSU has seen increasing enrollment and an undersupply of on-campus student housing that has led to this demand for these different housing types to address the housing needs of students in and around Kennesaw and Marietta campuses. So today we're going to speak specifically about the purpose-built student housing. The other areas, sorry, to go back a little bit, the areas that deal with the conversion of single-family homes, we already have codes in place to help address that, and that is a lot of where our definition of a family kind of fits in to trying to regulate that, to make sure that single-family neighborhoods maintain as single-family neighborhoods and not be converted to just housing with 5, 10 students living in it. But this analysis deals specifically with the purpose-built student housing. And to summarize this is really private student housing or private dorms is what these are. These are situations where Kennesaw State or any other institution has no involvement in the permitting, the management, the oversight, or the construction of these private buildings. So this is totally privately driven, and KSU is just receives the students as they come in to become educated every day.
Hey, Dana, could I ask a quick question before you get
Yes,
off
sir.
that slide? Is it restricted to students?
I am going to get to that in a little bit, and based upon federal law, we cannot, it cannot be restricted to students, based upon the Fair Housing Act. So, what are these like, and why are they different from a traditional apartment community? A lot of it's because of the way the format is. These are kind of a pod format, where you have like 5 different bedrooms. Each bedroom, generally speaking, has their own bathroom, and those 5 bedrooms share a common space, living area, and kitchen. Each one of those bedrooms is an individual lease versus the unit with all 5 bedrooms being one unit of lease. The other difference is that the leases are aligned to the Kennesaw State calendar year versus the normal calendar year. So you're able to get them over a 6 to 8 month lease period versus a 12-month lease period. A lot of these are highly amenitized too, with things like study rooms and pools and exercise rooms and other things that students enjoy. And finally, as Commissioner Ott had referenced to earlier, the Fair Housing Act is an important part of this because even though these are geared towards students, if they were to deny anybody going in there and trying to rent one of these units, that would be a violation of the Fair Housing Act. So they have to be open to all people, even though they're targeted towards students. Back in 2013, we did a brief analysis on the situation because that's when we saw the first few private student housings come into Cobb County as well as into the city of Kennesaw. And at that point in time, the city and the county got together and said, oh, let's take a look at this and let's analyze what's happening here. At that point in time, there were a total of about almost 7,000 beds between the on-campus housing and the purpose-built student housing. And when this analysis was done, Kennesaw State was just up in Kennesaw. They had not assumed the Marietta campus yet. So this is just focused on the Kennesaw area. There was an additional 3,500 beds in the planning stage between public and private. At that point in time, after this was done, because of the increased demand happening in private student housing, KSU decided to put a hold on the 1,500 beds that they were projected to build in that time period. And in this analysis, staff expressed some concerns about potential overbuilding of private student housing and the negative impact that a failure could have on the overall community. This is showing the current context of where we are with private student housing in the Kennesaw Town Center area. Right now, there is a total of about 1,300 units with about almost 4,200 beds that are being rented between in these areas. And that's about a 50-50 split between areas that are within the city of Kennesaw and areas that are in unincorporated Cobb County, primarily in the town center area. We did do a survey of all of these complexes as part of this analysis. We called each one in order to obtain these statistics, and they estimated that in this particular calendar year that they're at about almost 100% occupancy. So it seems to be doing well in the marketplace right now as it relates to these particular units. Yes, ma'am.
These are all in the Kennesaw campus.
These are
The
all in the
Marietta campus is city limits, but also there aren't any private in the Marietta area, which was, Southern Poly,
Not-
except on campus.
Not yet, except for on campus, and there is some off campus that I think the university is partnering with some old apartment complexes, and I that is an estimation. I don't know that for an absolute fact, but I think I've heard from others that there are some apartment complexes that Kennesaw State over the years has been assisting with as additional student housing.
At the Marietta campus?
Yes, ma'am.
Would they still be in the city limits?
Yes, ma'am. They are.
Okay. So that's why we wouldn't
That's
have
correct, ma'am.
zoned them or anything.
That's correct, ma'am. And they were existing already, so it was kind of a conversion of an apartment into student housing.
Thanks.
Yes, ma'am. Kennesaw State is in the middle of a wonderful master plan where they're kind of projecting out their future, and just some facts about Kennesaw State, and then kind of some policy implications to kind of follow through with that. Their fall enrollment this year was almost 36,000. They have between the two campuses about a little over 5,000 beds between the two campuses. That represents 13% of the Kennesaw population and 25% of the Marietta KSU population, and that's directly per their master plan. Kennesaw State, through their master plan, has stated their desire to see about another 7,400 beds through new construction or redevelopment of existing housing. So some policy questions that will be part of a conversation between KSU and the county over the years will be one on housing demand. Will the student population continue to increase? Under the previous president, they kind of we're starting at the process of leveling off the enrollment. So we'll have to kind of have conversations with the new president to see if she intends on keeping that particular enrollment, or if there's a desire to increase student enrollment again at KSU. That will impact housing demand in these particular areas. Also, will freshmen be required to live on campus in the future in Kennesaw? It is currently a requirement at the Marietta campus, the old SPSU. It is a requirement there that you, for the engineering students, that you live on campus for your freshman year. There's conversation of whether that is going to be a follow-up requirement on the Kennesaw campus as well. And that's something that we'll certainly work with Kennesaw State on as these decisions are being made. And finally, and as is common in most educational communities across the country right now, most new on-campus housing is being developed in a public-private model, where they are partnering with the private sector in order to assist the university in building and managing. And per their master plan, I think they're interested in following through with that up at KSU as well. So KSU is currently underway in finalizing their market study, and all of this will help in KSU making some policy decisions that we will then coordinate with them on as decisions are made. Since 2012, we have tracked crime statistics at all of these private student housing complexes. This is the 3,500 reported incidents. This is a combination of City of Kennesaw crime reports and Cobb County crime reports happening at each place. And you can see here the 4 most common violation types that happened when either Kennesaw or Cobb County Public Safety was called out to address a need in these private student housing complexes. An interesting thing is to look at how crime has tracked over this time period. You'll notice kind of up in 2014, there was a spike up. We had one pretty bad quarter with a lot of incidents happening, and then it tapering back off again. I have a feeling, and this is just looking at the data and being someone who understands data, I don't know any specifics on this, but looking at it, I would think that the management company for that particular complex probably decided to start enforcing some of the rules and regulations a little more heartily and make sure the students are behaving in an appropriate manner. Especially seeing the drop-off in the way crime has decreased over that time period. There are some positive impacts of private student housing that the board needs to be aware of. One, this does fill a housing need. Students, as KSU continues to prosper, they're the second largest university in the state system, and this fills a housing need that they're not currently able to meet. There is less financial risk for the students and families due to the ways that the leases are done. In a traditional apartment complex, again, you're leasing the entire unit, and if some of your roommates decide they're gonna live somewhere else or transfer or do something else, that financial risk is on the individuals who signed that lease. Where in the bedroom model, it's just that student or family who has the obligation and the lease requirement for that. This can also, and this is a really important factor, that can really help the city of Kennesaw as well as the town center CID in implementing their master plans and downtown revitalization. Kennesaw has recently approved a beautiful new development that is student-focused in their downtown and is really starting to have a transformative effect of what's happening in downtown Kennesaw. And we have to be cognizant of the fact that these developments can really bring a lot of energy and vibrancy into areas as we think about them towards the future. As part of this analysis, we surveyed a lot of other college and university towns throughout the Southeast. So I'm just going to kind of go over some of our lessons learned about what we learned, and then I'll go through and tell you about some of the recommendations that staff has for you. As we look at Georgia, we looked at Statesboro, Valdosta, Atlanta, and Athens. In Georgia, most of the other jurisdictions regulate student housing just through their regular multifamily housing district. Student housing for Atlanta and Athens was a specific tool to help with downtown redevelopment. I think you can go into downtown Atlanta right now and see the huge impact that Georgia State University has had on downtown Atlanta, and certainly UGA has traditionally had on Athens. Each one of those jurisdictions, though, have very specific downtown development standards for their downtowns. So these aren't standards specific to student housing, but they're specific to any development that will occur in their downtown. And they expect that the student housings would follow through with those specific standards to make sure that their investments that are happening kind of meet with their overall strategy for placemaking in their downtown areas. Tallahassee, Florida has obviously Florida State University and a few other colleges there. They allow private student housing in their mixed use and planned unit development codes. And they allow for an increase of density, an increase of building height, and they also require higher parking ratios in their private student housing. Again, it's because you're renting by bedroom versus by unit. So if you're renting by bedrooms, it's expected there's more cars there. So that's the reason for that. And then finally, up in North Carolina, we have Durham and Greenville, North Carolina. Both of them require special land use permits or their special permit processes in order to approve new private student housing in those areas. This is particularly important because Greenville, North Carolina is where Eastern Carolina University is one of the areas where we actually have seen a private student housing go south. And they did have one go under. They overbuilt in that particular area, and the city and the developer are still struggling with how to deal with this now large investment empty building, which has some negative consequences of the community. Because if you have a large vacant building, you have vandalism and crime and other things that can happen there. So it's really become a problem that they're struggling with. And a lot of the special land permit processes that these two jurisdictions have put in place were a direct result of this particular occurrence that occurred up in North Carolina. So based upon all this, staff has 3 policy recommendations. We would not recommend all 3 of these. We would recommend that the board go through one of these. And what we're going to do is go through some of the pros and cons of each one of these approaches. And then we'll certainly take any recommendation from the board on your desire for how you would like to see staff pursue implementation of this. The first is an overlay district. Staff actually likes the overlay district out of all 3 as probably the most effective way of managing this particular situation. This could be established to be area specific. We could incorporate some requirements on there, such as looking at the proximity to campus, how it relates to the KSU operated bus service, ensure that pedestrian and motorized transportation is incorporated into it. We can also vary them based upon the type of underlying zoning which was there. And this would really enable us to ensure that the development of new private student housing wouldn't alter the existing character of other surrounding communities in here. The disadvantage of this is it would.
Dana,
o-
one
Yep,
sec.
yes, sir.
So obviously, KSU is kind of the one that has, but we also have Life University, we have other universities. Are you saying that they would not be allowed around these other universities? Because like, for example, the KSU operated bus service, they're not going to operate it to say Life University or something like that.
Life has a bus service too, so we could incorporate something similar in there for Life University as well.
So it would be basically institution provided service.
That's correct.
Okay.
Good catch, sir. Life is private, but there are some unincorporated areas very on the outskirts of Life University along Cobb Parkway that would be potential areas for private student housing for either KSU or Life University students. The disadvantages of the overlay district is it would only pertain to those areas. So if someone wished to do a private student housing outside of the area designated, they would not be allowed to do so. And this would also add additional layer of regulation. In this particular, we listed that as a disadvantage. However, it is staff's belief at this point in time that we really don't see that as a negative. We think that the additional regulation is probably warranted right now, given our concerns for oversupply.
Well, it would seem as if in one of your earlier slides, you talked about how this was to help Town Center and also Kennesaw with their master plans. If you have a master plan, then it would seem to me that you would want to designate the area where they're going to go.
Absolutely. Absolutely, sir. So the special use permit, this would be another option for the board to consider. This would change the applicability from just being an area specific to a county-wide regulation. We would also, as we would be able to do with the overlay district, we would be able to specify requirements that would be able to be addressed, like parking, lighting, security, things of that nature. And also, the benefit to the special land use permit process versus the overlay district is it would allow us to kind of connect this to the health and general welfare considerations that are considered in all special land use permit applications. The disadvantage of this is it would be countywide. So it would open it up a little bit larger. And then, as I said before, it would add another layer of regulation, which staff thinks is warranted in this particular case. The last recommendation for the board to consider is a comprehensive plan amendment. This would allow us to do some special area policy guidance within our comprehensive plan. It would not act as a regulatory policy, though. This would only be, so it would not be a regulation, it would only be a policy if this were to occur. The disadvantage of this is that it would be discretionary, because it would only be something to be considered for the board during a rezoning process. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any additional questions or take any of the board's ideas on how you'd like to see this come forward. The timeline for this is we will come back next month for the board to consider accepting the study. And then we would ask for some guidance on which of the recommendations you would like to see staff pursue. If it's one of the two codes, then I would need to speak with the county attorney's office to see if it's warranted to extend the moratorium to provide time to write the particular code sections, if we're able to do that. But that's, I think, a offline conversation I would need to have with Ms. Dance.
I'll come down the line here.
Dana, you said earlier in there that the leases were aligned with the academic year. What happens when school's not in session? They're all empty?
I think it depends on the individual students. I'm sure there is an option where they can have it be for the full 12-month period.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's an option, but if there's also the option that it's only the academic year, you're talking about these units being, a lot of units being empty for an entire, 3 or 4 month period.
That is correct, sir. That is correct.
Possibly, excuse me, Commissioner, and then some students do attend over the summer.
Yeah, I
as
mean, I know
well.
there'll be some students attending, but I mean, if it's by the academic year, a majority of them probably are not.
I would wager, Commissioner, that the pricing model for that is considered in that, because this is a private company and they are interested in making a profit. So I would guess, and this is just an educated guess, that their pricing model for each lease term would put that into consideration.
Is there any model like that out there right now?
Most of the private student housing is in that model right now, sir.
And so do they stay empty during the summer?
There are more people in them during the school year than outside of the school year.
So like our representative from KSU, could you come up closer?
Well, the other thing, Dana, you know, folks that live in dorms, they move out completely when the school year is over.
Right.
I mean, are these folks gonna be moving in and out all the time?
Right. I just want to see what her, do you have any knowledge about what happens during the summer with these current models?
Most of the contracts are actually 12-month
You gotta-
contracts.
Yeah, come on up. Yeah, you're fine.
Sorry. My name's Casey Helton. I'm the Assistant Vice President for Campus Services for Kennesaw State University. Housing and Residence Life reports to me. Most of the contracts in the private apartment complexes off campus are 12-month contracts. They just align with the academic year. So they would start in August and end at the end of July. We do have a lot of students that leave, both on campus and off campus for the summer, but their contracts are still for the whole full year.
So they still are responsible for the apartments during that time when they're empty?
Yes, and we have apartments on campus that are 12-month contracts as well. We do offer academic year. Some students want to stay all year long, and it's beneficial for them to be able to stay all year long, but some of them will vacate for the summer and just pay the rent
Okay,
until they come back in the fall.
well, they are.
And your dorms are probably, the students in your dorms on campus that are controlled by KSU. I mean, they're probably half empty in the summer.
Yeah, we
Wow.
actually there are 2 of our communities in Marietta are 10-month contracts, so they're academic year contracts. We're shifting 3 of our communities in Kennesaw to 10-month contracts. That also opens up the opportunity for us to do summer programming. So we'll have camps, orientation, different people that come onto campus during the summer. That will make up the gap of only having 10-month contracts. But we have a lot of students, particularly upperclassmen, that work. They don't necessarily want to go back home for the summer, so it's beneficial for them to have this opportunity.
Okay.
Dana,
Thank you for being.
I guess I don't really see, I mean, they're basically apartments.
Yes, sir.
And I mean, it's a great benefit to the universities and all that, but I just not really, I don't see what's in it for the county.
As far as additional regulations, sir?
Well, I mean, we're talking about creating another layer of housing, or, I mean, we have enough problems as we saw with parking in regular apartments, figuring out how many, we're gonna count by beds, we're gonna count by units. And now this is, something I don't really see what is the advantage of this from the existing, people building apartments and all that. I just don't really see why would we want to put another thing in there when, this is really just an apartment.
It's an apartment, Commissioner, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, well, that's right.
I think the difference is the layout of this versus a traditional apartment. And that's what makes this a little bit trickier because it's the pod format. If the apartment / private student housing were to fail, the reuse potential of that building are much more difficult compared to the reuse potential of a traditional apartment community. Because if you can't really take a pod system and rent it out to families, because it's a huge apartment then. You have a 5-bedroom apartment.
Right, I mean, I understand all that, but I just don't see, I mean, okay, so they want to build a pod-based system. Why does that all, I mean, how is this classification going to keep it from failing versus a regular apartment? I mean, I just, that's what I'm missing here is just by calling it something different, allows a developer to come in and build a pod where, I mean, an apartment, there's something to prevent an apartment builder from building a pod today, right?
Actually, the only thing preventing that from getting built right now is the fact that we have a moratorium on private student housing. Because about 3 years ago.
No, but I mean,
the
that's.
board approved, allowed private student housing in, I think it was the RM16 zoning category.
Right, but I mean, that's if you want to call it private student housing. I guess my question is, under our existing zoning, with the type of apartments that you can build, are you prevented from building pods?
No.
Right, so under our existing apartments, and so what I hear is that just by calling it purpose-built student housing, it's going to keep it from failing, whereas a regular apartment would possibly fail even if it was built the exact same way. I don't see how calling it something different, because our existing code allows everything that this would allow.
I think if we were to do it under the special land use permit, we would be able to require some market information from them to get an understanding of what the market is for private
Right,
student
but that's
housing,
my
which would-
question.
which would
Why? I
allow the
mean,
board to make a decision on whether they wanted to approve that or not.
right, but that's my question is, if our current zoning code already allows what this would allow, why do we need something new?
Well, that's up to, that's why the board.
Well, no, I know, but I mean, that my question is, if you could already do all of this under the existing code, what are we gaining by adding something new? I'm just not seeing the connection here as to what we're gaining by all of a sudden putting something new in place if you can already do it.
Let me have Commissioner Brooks, she has a different look at that.
Okay, first of all, the study was done to see where we are as far as not just being overbuilt or failing, but what is out there and where it could go without encroaching on neighborhoods, number one, and more security. You saw the chart of the police calls and 3,000 and plus over a 5-year period, 4-year period is quite a bit. And you saw the categories of the reason for the calls: thefts, noise, things like that. So the moratorium was done because of the many requests we had for student housing. And the reason we're looking at this is so that it doesn't encroach on neighborhoods and residential family areas, but also the security areas, the police and security. KSU owns a lot of property in the campus and area and can build student housing now without going through zoning or
They're exempt.
anything. And that's fine. I'm not saying, that's a problem. I'm just saying they can do that now, but this is private built, an unincorporated Cobb that affects our residents. And that's all we're trying to look at. If there could be a special overlay district where student housing would be appropriate and in certain areas, and also looking at the security issues that go along with student housing.
But none of that's prevented today.
No, but I think one of the things it does do, though, is that if we did it under the current zoning, all right, the RM
12 or
12,
16.
16, I mean, there is a chance that the surrounding neighborhood might not realize the real intent of that is to do student housing. And they would miss it in the discussion until it showed up, and then all these kids showed up, right? So I think one of the advantages is it engages the community around where this potential student housing goes, by giving them a classification. It highlights that this housing is going to be for students. I hear what Commissioner Ott's saying, but I also know that, we all went to college, all right? And we all know that sometimes that line between where the university starts or ends and the community starts and ends sometimes isn't very well defined, and you have overlap that has issues. And I don't want to unfairly, tag KSU or anybody else here. They have, public safety issues. They all have them, all right? Because we were all young ones, so we did things that we hope don't get into the press anymore. But I do get the point of one of the things we might want to look at to make sure that the community does know that if we're going to approve something for housing, and we did that, I think, just before we did the moratorium, we approved a development for student housing, and we had pretty good community impact. But not everyone is going to be that actively involved with the community to go out there and advertise this thing. Whereas if we do this overlay, or we do a special category, nobody can say, well, we didn't know about it. So that's just one thing I'm thinking about.
I hear what you're saying. I just, you know, if it's, and we've had the discussion, because I know Commissioner Burrow has had to deal with it a lot, of students renting houses. And, you know,
Right.
so the county went after that. But I mean, we're talking about RM 16. There's no way this board is going to approve an RM 16 next to a neighborhood. I mean, that would be, I don't care who it's for, whether it's students or whatever. We would be remiss in allowing something like that to happen.
I hear you, but that's why I don't.
And the crime issue, I mean, you put that many students in one place, you're gonna have crime and all those other things. I mean, it's just gonna happen. And I don't know, I'm missing,
I think the rationale for why you would want to do an overlay district is that you could kind of have a conversation with the private sector as to where would be appropriate areas for it to
but
occur.
isn't that what we have a future land use map for?
We do, and that would be another strategy as well.
I mean, because that's, I mean, you can do it in a future land
And
use
we also
map.
have to look at traffic for the, wherever it's gonna go.
But all
to.
those things are done either with the future land use map or as part of the zoning analysis already.
But I also, you know, and again, I hate to use examples, but I will. You know, many, many years ago, they built apartments in certain areas, you know, and people lived there. And then over time, things happened and the apartments became a problem. So when you go and you put something in there, whether it's well-intentioned, but, you know, things change over time and the apartments sometimes become a problem. And so then you have to deal with that, which is why you don't want to have too many apartment complexes in a certain area because over time, they don't all maintain the same standard. So I think that as a planning tool, you know, the future land use map certainly does that. But I think that's where we have this discussion is that as part of the tools for the future land use map, do we want to highlight those areas like the former Southern Polytech area now, where it's getting more development down there. They're really doing a great job of taking that campus and doing different things with it. More students might want to live down there, which will have an impact on Marietta and also along the loop in 41. So, you know, I hear what all you're saying here, but I also know that you cannot have a campus of 36,000 people implanted in the middle of your county without significant tentacles that have an impact on the community, both positive and negative.
Well, no, I agree. Let me just expand on something you said though, because you talk about the apartments. KSU goes and renovates their dorms when they get old and tired because they have to. I mean, it's just something they got to do. What's to guarantee that these privately owned, because part of the reason that apartments go downhill is because they get old and tired.
Right.
And they're too expensive to maintain for the owners, and so they just kind of let them go, and then they go down. It's kind of like, you know, when hotels go from this chain to that chain to that chain, apartments do the same thing. What's to prevent that from happening here?
It isn't, but again, when you decide to, it's part of the discussion you're going to have with the zoning is that if you have an area around a campus, all right, and you know it's an area where because of the development of the college or the university, you may have more housing there, the community has to be involved in that discussion. All right, that's all I'm saying. It's private, but nonetheless, even if it's private, it still has an implication, it has consequences if you don't do it right. And you had a great example, Greenville, North Carolina, built a private public set of apartments, and it didn't work out. What do you do now with all those? Okay, so
What was the reason for the failure of that one?
I think it
Did
had,
the study find out?
I think it was, Mandy, was it market related?
It was further from the campus.
It was further from the campus and the students didn't want to live there? Okay. So it was further from the campus than other areas, and the students just didn't go.
okay, well, there's a lot of factors that go into these, but again, that's the discussion we're having here is that, you know, universities, no matter where they are, you want them to fit into the community. And if you don't do it right up front, then you can have something down the road. Yeah, Commissioner Burrow, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Lisa, did you have anything? Because I'd like to make some final suggestions, kind of.
It's nice to sit back and just listen.
You don't have any student housing in your district? You're good?
I support the idea of having something to distinguish student housing. I remember Helen being here and having a number of challenges with identifying student housing. And to me, it makes sense to just have something that differentiates it from the current category of zoning that we do have. I like the special land use permit option as opposed to just having what was the first option?
Overlay?
An
Overlay
overlay
district.
district, just in case things expand, you have some flexibility with the SLUC versus an overlay district. And Dana, tell me your last option.
Would just be some alterations to the future land use map to
Yeah,
add some special area text.
I don't think the second option precludes the third option of having a special land use permit option, but still finding some way to incorporate that in your future land use map planning. The misfortune would be to have a great university and not to have enough identifiable housing for students to live in, because it does limit opportunities for those that want to come in from out of state or even from out of the metro region, as Kennesaw State is transforming itself from being more of a commuter school to more of a freshman opportunity where people come in and live in on campus. But I know this is, more of a District 1 and 3 matter, so I have a lot of deference to the commissioners there. But I certainly see some benefit to having some something to distinguish this housing from the current housing.
I'd really like to hear from the KSU lady again.
And the
KSU
other-
lady.
Yeah, I'm sorry, the
Representative.
vice president from KSU, and it was such a long title, I just.
Casey.
I'll just say that something that we're focused on, and the reason I'm here today is just to hear what the presentation was. But our students don't always differentiate between off-campus and on-campus housing. And we just want to make sure that whatever we do, if we focus on students, that we're making it as safe as possible, that we're being as transparent as possible, that they understand what they're signing and what it means. So we would just like to work with, if it's unincorporated Cobb or it's the city of Kennesaw, it's the city of Marietta, to make sure that we're providing good information, clear information, consistent levels of service, whether it be police visibility in that area, whether it be transportation using Big Al Bus. We just want to make sure that we're able to meet the anticipated and vocalized expectations of our students, because they don't differentiate. And so however you guys decide that you want to do that, we respect that. We just want to be a part of whatever decision and recommendations you guys make. I think that understanding our enrollment trends and understanding what our goal is as far as recruiting students and maintaining a level of enrollment, I think that's one of the key components, but it's also the level of service that we're providing those students, even when they don't live on campus, because they don't really differentiate that way.
Yeah, I think some great points there is that, look, you're a big university, all right? And we're a big county and we're growing. We have to do this in sync, all right? We both want to make sure that we get this right. So I would really like to have more, of a discussion between KSU and the city of Kennesaw and us to come up with, okay, what do you think the best approach is on that? But that's just my thought, Commissioner Burrow.
Yeah. And I agree. First of all, thank you, Dana, and to your staff for all the research and long hours and that went into this study. I know we've been working on it for a while. And there are some of the other organizations and KSU and the city and Town Center CID in the room today, and others that are watching at home. This is the first really rollout that we've seen from the study and this presentation today. So what I'd like to recommend is we have gotten some feedback from Bells Ferry Civic, very detailed and great suggestions and ideas that I'll be happy to share with the board. Because they also got the draft initially, and also some of the other folks. So I'd like to email out your presentation and the draft today to everybody that's here and Bells Ferry Civic again, and get some input from all the folks that are gonna be affected, and maybe have an open house with public input? Or do we have to have a public hearing
It's not a
for
bad
this?
idea, really, though.
Do we have to have a public hearing?
It's not required as part of the process, but if it's something the board wants to do, we're certainly happy to
Sure.
oblige.
I think that's a great idea, because, and what's the other association that's at the Pine Tree Golf Course?
Pine Tree
Yes,
Civic
Pine Tree would
Association.
definitely
You
be
know,
one
there's some
we
others
want
that
to
out
talk
there,
to.
so
Absolutely.
I
They
think
need
that'd be a
to be
great idea.
included
It would be
too.
one of these joint discussions that we have. You know, we already have a product that we can discuss, so that's a great starting point. That's clearly been well-researched and organized, so yeah, I think that's a great idea. Because my concern again is that we want to make sure we do this as a community effort, not just Cobb County and the college or the university, but everybody's involved in this discussion that belongs and lives out there.
Right, and I think it would be, when does the moratorium expire?
October 31st, ma'am.
Okay, well, we're not gonna have time
Well, we can
by
always extend,
October 31st to do all that.
we can always extend
So
that,
we'll
though.
probably need to extend that at least till the end of the year, till we can have some public meetings and discussion from the other groups.
Everybody good with that? Well, this, I agree with Commissioner Cooper, this really is a District 1 and 3 issue.
Well, actually,
I know,
all of KSU is now District 3 after the redistricting.
There is parts outside of it that are not.
sure, right. So, okay, let's do that, all right? Let's go ahead and organize a public hearing with the community and take this product and make sure that we involve, I gotta get a famous name tag for the KSU lady here and
Yeah,
sure you're included
and Casey, can you give your card to my assistant Inger, and
yeah,
I'll include you in the loop on the emails.
okay. And let's also, and
Thank
the
you.
representative from the city of Kennesaw, is he back?
Daryl
There he is, okay, yeah. Let's make sure you're part of this group too, okay?
and Tracy.
Absolutely, yeah, and Tracy, absolutely. So, well, we already have Tracy's, whatever her last name is now.
We know how to get a hold of Tracy.
Or it's gonna be. Yes, great. Okay, so we have all the principals here, and we can go from there. So that's great, great job, Dana.
Thank you, sir.
I look
Appreciate
forward
that.
to see what comes out of this process.
Thank you.
All right. And then the last presentation here is the SPLOST report. Okay. We have the various departments here.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon, Eric.
This afternoon, we're going to present to the board an update on the 2011 and 2016 SPLOST program. Updates will be included from facilities, information services, public safety, parks, recs, and cultural affairs, and transportation. We just wanted to give you a quick update on the current 2016 SPLOST receipts. As of August of 2018, projected was just under $322 million, and actuals are just over $371 million, so about 15.4% over projected. And with that, I'm going to ask Scott if he'll come up and present on facilities.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, could I say
Sure.
something real quick
Sure.
before Scott starts?
Yeah.
Can we go back to that last slide, Cornelius? Could you go back to that last slide real quick? I just want to kind of point out for anybody that's watching, there's a lot of discussion about this extra revenue. The reason the board does not typically spend it when it's sitting there like that is because this SPLOST is a 6-year SPLOST. We're halfway through it. If the economy were to take a downturn or whatever, those bars would come really close and potential priority projects would not get done. So that's one of the reasons why. Plus, the board has historically been conservative in its estimates. Typically, we get about 132 million a year, but the estimates are always at 125.
But I also thought we had a discussion last year that we were gonna have a list of sequence of how we were gonna be spending the SPLOST from year 1 through year 6. Like, you know, project, we say we have 50 projects, all right?
Well,
And we were gonna purchase them in the order that we approved that list.
Well, the board each year approves a SPOS budget for that year, which lists the projects that are gonna be done that
Yeah,
year.
but I thought we were gonna spread that, because we're collecting more revenue than we anticipated. So that means we're gonna accelerate the building of some of these programs.
The way I understand it, Buddy may have to help me. I'm not sure that we can start utilizing those over projections until.
I get that part, but I thought, where's Jackie?
Well, no, I think what you're talking about, Mr. Chairman, is what's been done in the past, like you said, is, the more projects have been moved forward. So like you said, accelerate the number of projects that are being done. If the initial estimate was, I'm just gonna throw a number out there, say 20 projects in a year,
Right,
they might move it to do 25 or 30. And so
Right.
everything would be front-loaded.
but where's that list of when we expected to start building these projects out?
It's,
On, sir. Oh, is it on? Okay,
If you're gonna
thank you.
sit over there, you gotta start acting like you know what you're doing, all right? So-
That is true. So what we've done is we initially sit down with each commissioner.
Right.
It's, for example, Commissioner Weatherford had a library, Commissioner Ott had a library. So we prioritize early on which libraries would be built first.
Right.
Based on whether it was state money in it or whether or not it was going to be an expansion, whatever. So I can get you the list.
Well, I'm just saying is that's the list that should be here today. We can see where we are with regard to that list.
Okay.
Overall.
and that's actually, remember the conversation you and I had last week?
Yes, sir.
That is actually the list that the Spliced Oversight Committee has given.
Right.
It's the one with the green, the yellow, and the red circles.
Okay.
Right.
Which we just had the conversation last week, and they're gonna make some additions to it, because the list right now was initially designed for the Spliced Oversight Committee.
Right.
It doesn't have all the information on it that the commissioners would want to see. So we actually met last week as to what Erica and everybody's going to add to to try not to create multiple products, what they're going to add to the Spliced Oversight Committee's list so that they can bring it to this meeting, and you get exactly what you're asking.
Okay, I just want to make it available to all the commissioners. all
Right, well, no, and that's what they're going to do.
Okay, all right, that's
um,
great.
But when they showed me what the Spliced Oversight Committee, which is new in that book, it didn't have everything on there that the
Okay,
commissioners would want to
so
see.
that's still a work in progress?
So all of the projects are on the list that we are working on, and future projects. You know, the
Right.
one that has the dots?
Right,
And it tells you what area or what phase the project is
Sure.
in, whether it's in design, construction, right-of-way acquisition, or whether it's completed, or if it's in black, it's not started. But outside of that, it tells you when we are projected to start that project. So I can go over that with you, and then like Commissioner said, there were a couple of other things that he had asked DOT to put into a work document for him related to SPLOST that we would like to consolidate into just one report.
yeah, and that would be a great thing for the public to see.
Right, and basically what I asked them to add was when a project's complete, because we've had questions about leftover money. And so what they're gonna add to that on any of the projects that have the green dots that are completed, if there's unencumbered or if there's encumbered money left, so that it's kind of a complete report.
Okay, all
And
right,
one of the other things too, Chairman, that I will send to you, I thought I did already, which is an explanation of how the projects progress from the time the board has approved it. So if it is a commodity, it was a Gantt chart. It goes this way, if then, if this, then this.
Right.
If that, it goes this way. So if it is a product, but not a tangible project like a bridge or whatever, then it goes another track. So we put that together so that the layperson could look at that online or on our SPLOST website and see if it's this type of project, it follows this track. If it's this type of project, it follows this track from the time that you all approve a project. We also added a glossary to it as well.
so what
so
you're
that
telling
we
me is
can
I should have
understand.
gone to the Spliced Oversight Committee website, just check this out?
It-
Is that
It's
what
not
you're
up there
telling me?
yet, but it
Yeah.
will be.
We just went through it last week, so we'll make sure that each of you has it.
The information. Yes.
Yeah, the Gantt chart that Jackie's talking about is really, really informative, because it really kind of answers the question as to not just where a project is, but actually how it works its way through.
Okay, all right, well, when I leave here, I'll go right to that website.
Okay.
I will forward it to you, so you don't even have to go to the website. I'll forward it to you, sir.
Thank you. All right, sorry about that, I just,
All right, with that, well, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Commissioners, Deputy County Manager. I don't have a list of all the projects we've done, so
That's all right.
something short here. But starting off here, it does show the total of money that we've received. Right now, we're at 119 million that we got to do our projects with. With that, to date, we've encumbered right at $59 million of that 119. And I have to say that it's taken a lot of teamwork with other departments to get to this point. And I've definitely got to have a shout out to property management for all the work they've done to get to this point, the staff. They've done a lot to get to the point we're at right here. With that, some highlights from public safety. We purchased, of course, the LGE building. We've started Station 1. If you were to go to Station 1 today, the site has been, the trees have been cut, so you just got a dirt lot out there now. Looks good. Station 7, of course, we're working on design. We're working on some security fencing underway, working with Adam Story with public safety on that. Renovation at Kennesaw Police Fire Superstation, of course, roof, as well as some interior work going on up there as well, working with Adam on that as well. Judicial highlights. 3 major renovations are coming to a close here at the end of the year. So we got the Magistrate Court 4th floor working with Judge Holmes, child support recovery in Tennis Park, and then of course the 4th floor build out. 3 projects I'd love. I hope y'all have the opportunity to walk over and look at. If not, I'd be happy to walk with you and show them to you. Some of the library highlights, of course, at North Cobb Regional. If you were to go up there today, you're going to see a dirt lot up there as well. All the trees have been removed up there. Schweitzer, we're in the process of negotiating, working with the bids right now. It's in the planning stage. Of course, that's going to be a renovation. Some other highlights as far as the health departments, Acworth, Kennesaw Health is completed. We're doing a small renovation for the sheriff's office in public safety building. And of course, there's smaller jobs we're doing too with the stuff, and that's some retaining walls. You got some cross tie walls that we're replacing. The facility restoration, we've spent right at 4.2, or encumbered right at 4.2 million of this. If you look at a lot of these towers here, the money's almost spent there. With that, these are a couple of retaining walls we've got completed. Look a whole lot better than the cross tie walls. This is Magistrate Court. We're ahead of schedule by at least a month up there. This is child support recovery. This picture really doesn't justify how bad their section looks as far as the then picture, but it will be completed at the end of this week. And of course, this is the Acworth Kennesaw Health Department. The 4th floor build out Superior Court. The senior judges have been moved over, and that's it.
So, Scott, with the 4th floor and the Superior Court, that was the final unfinished floor, correct?
Sir?
That was the one floor that was unfinished?
Yes, sir.
So now all the floors is that completely?
Well, no, it won't complete the grand jury won't be complete, but everything else will be complete on that floor.
Okay, all right.
Does that include the new furniture?
Well, there is new furniture, but for Vic Reynolds' area, we're using a cabinet shop to build their furniture.
Okay.
To save money on that.
Which
make that,
I have to kind of
through.
put a plug in for that. I mean, Kim and I were over there last week. If for my fellow commissioners, if you have not been to the cabinet shop and see what they can do, they save tens of thousands of dollars. And they're basically doing all the cabinets for Vic Reynolds renovations, correct?
Right. We got a price of right at $40,000 for all the furniture. The cabinet shop's doing it for less than $5,000.
Well, they did the magistrate court too, didn't they? And all
Yes,
that?
they're doing that
Yeah,
as well.
they're pretty
Yeah.
amazing.
Yes, sir.
I thought we were moving them to a new facility. We're still talking about
It's-
that.
Yes, sir.
It's
It
on the
is
SPLOST
part of the
list.
SPLOST. Yes, sir.
Okay, right. Yeah, it's a pretty humble facility over there. Yeah, yeah, it is. Okay,
We are meeting this week with Parks and Rec. We do have, we're going to discuss with them a possible area. But again, though, it'd be something we need, we start with Eddie on
I'm
that
told they need
location.
more cabinet makers, right, Scott?
Sir?
Didn't you tell me the other day?
We could use some more.
no.
It's not in our budget, no, sir. We're going to make it without it.
Good try, though.
Yeah.
Thank you, Scott.
All right, thank you.
Nice try. You killing me, all of you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, Deputy County Manager. For the technology splosh, you're familiar, we have the $30,079,000 total, which is divided into two major project categories, the data center build and modernization, and then business technology transformation. If you look, you'll see we have obligated so far about $3,204,196 of that, and that shows you the obligation in each category. The first project, the data center, obviously, as you're aware, we haven't started building that, but because we haven't been able to start building it, some of the equipment in the data center has gotten unsupportable, and we've had to go ahead. It will be equipment that will move over to the new data center, particularly the expandable storage, if you remember when we purchased that, and then the firewalls. We just couldn't go any longer without the firewalls. So those two items will move to the new data center when we build. And we hope we're getting close, and we'll be talking soon with Commissioner High about some possibilities for a location. So going on next. Yes, sir. Okay. That's the
Expandable
expandable
storage, you're
storage.
done, right?
That's just the storage.
Yeah, you're finished with that
We're
program.
finished with that one.
Okay.
Right, but I'm guessing there'll probably be a little bit of cost to move them, right?
Oh, there'll be a cost to move them.
Right, so-
Yeah, these are project, the whole project is the data center.
Right.
So that pot of money has little pieces in it,
Right.
kind of like when you pave different sidewalks or different roads. The entire project is when we finish the data center, if we have money left in that, that's what will be the available, if that occurs. I think we may end up,
But this cost here was for the equipment, but then when they
It
move it,
was.
but it'll all be part of that 30 million.
it'll all be part of the data center. when we-
Right.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Going on to the technology transformation portion, again, this is the same way. It has a lot of little projects under it. You know, the Unified Court Case Management System. I'm not going to read those off because I'm going to go through each one. You will notice there are two new ones on there, though. I'll go through those in detail more than the other ones. Go ahead to the next slide. This shows you of that pot of the expended or obligated money, where those are obligated in those various projects. I'll give you a second to look at those, and then we'll go to the slides and talk about them. It's been a while since we briefed you on some of these projects. Okay. Unified Court Case Management System. It's been a while since I've been in here and talked to you. We did have the RFP on the street. We had the 7 qualified responses. The committee is currently evaluating those. If you remember, that's a large committee because this is a large project. Expect that evaluation to take several months. So when that is finished, we'll be bringing back forward the vendor selection process back to the board as far as who that vendor would be and what the next phases and next steps of that are. As you're familiar, this is a project that's partially funded by Spliced. There is money in the 19 budget that you put in there as well. So, okay. Any questions on that one? Yes, ma'am.
So how much is it funded with the SPLOST and with the current budget allocation?
In my budget right now, it's actually projected to be 19, 20, 21. If you remember, we spread this out. You asked us to spread it out. I think there's approximately $3 million in this budget this year, and then the 2 that are lost. So,
How many, what's the additional dollar amount that's needed to complete this?
we won't know until we select the vendor. I can tell you the
see.
proposals came in anywhere from 5.9 to 16.
Above and beyond what's been allocated?
No, ma'am, the total.
The
From
total,
five-
okay,
The total,
so
the
it was
proposals we
okay.
got from those 7 vendors ranged from 5.9 million to 16 million.
Okay,
So when we see which ones are selected, then we'll have a better idea.
okay.
Buddy, how much did we put in the 19 budget for this?
3,
I know overall it was $12 million, but we spread it out.
we did, yes, sir. That's what I said, I think it
I
was
was
3.
gonna try to
some-
answer
It was
Commissioner Cupid's-
3 something. I didn't
Commissioner
bring it
Cupid's
exactly.
answer
You
the
were-
question here.
do you
Sir,
remember?
we had adopted in the 19 budget 3.45 million.
3.45.
Okay.
There you go.
I knew it
I
was
just
3
know this is
something.
a significant project, so I'm just trying to get a
Yes, ma'am,
sense
it
of
is.
when we'll get all of it funded and moving forward.
We did put in the RFP, and that's what you were referring to, sir, that the vendors that applied had to be willing to accept it in a 5-year
Okay.
range, depending on what the price is.
Right.
So, the next one is business continuity plan. I want to talk just a second about this one. I'm pleased to announce we're pretty much almost finished with this one. You will be at the next work session. We'll be coming forward with Cassie and myself will be coming forward with a vendor to present you the plan itself. You'll have it ahead of time and hopefully bring it that board meeting that night to actually get approved by you all. And then we will take that and start using that to develop our disaster recovery plan because they have all identified their recovery time objectives for their various projects, which then have to do with the various functions, and then have to do with our various applications and systems. So I'm really proud of this one. It's taken us a long time.
Sharon, the first part of this, when you and I talked about this last year, the first part was identifying which functions needed to be on the list to be recovered right away,
Pretty
right?
cool. That's
And
what
that
they've
part's
done.
all done,
That's
right?
what they've done in this, and we
Right.
then now have to do the disaster recovery and how we're gonna support them. Yes, sir. It was a great effort, and I just have to shout out to every department and agency and elected official in the county. They all really came together, and this one has everybody's input in it. So I'm really excited about what we'll present to you next month, or this month. I guess October's coming pretty soon, but next month. The next one is the business intelligence and dashboarding tool. This project is almost finished. It won't go away, but the SPLOS portion of this is almost finished. I'm proud to say we've implemented in almost all departments. There was a change to this, not a change, but you approved a little bit ago. It has gone so well that public safety especially has implemented in a lot of their areas. So we expanded a little bit on it. We had some dollars left in the SPLOS allocated for this, and so we bought 75 additional licenses for them to expand their use of it. So this one pretty soon, the next thing you'll probably hear me say, this project is closed as far as the SPLOS portion of it. We'll continue to use it as an enterprise system, I hope, for a long time going forward. Web portal. This project, we have sent out the beta version of this to all the departments and agencies, and your assistants have it as well, to go through it and look at it and see what you think about it, give us your feedback back. And we hope to go live on this sometime in October, early November. So going real well, we think. With that, you'll kind of see the next slide just shows you some of the look and feel of it. That's not the picture that'll be on the actual front. We haven't taken the one that'll be actually showing up there yet, but then go on to the next one.
So is this training program countywide
Which training program?
or the web portal?
The one that we talked about is for your web administrators in each department.
Yeah.
Like it's not for individuals that don't interact and have to put data on it.
Right.
But each department has a web administrator, so yes, sir.
Okay, all right.
So, and your administrators some of them were also.
Because a lot of times people are going to combine the technology and then don't do the appropriate training
Right.
to be able to maximize the use of it.
Yeah, yes, sir. This went out, the training was to all departments, administrators, and frankly, we're gonna be given more once they get out and actually play with it a little bit. They had the basic training, but we'll be doing more.
Okay.
My web team will be available that when it does roll out, especially to pretty much roll out and be where everyone is to need assistance with that. So, okay.
Yeah, go back.
Yes, sir.
So this one right here, this web portal is mobile?
The web portal is everything. One of the things we've gotten a few complaints about with our current site is, as good as it is, it's an older site, so it doesn't work on every device. When you go to your phone, it doesn't always adjust, right? And you can't find some things, or if you're on like a Fire tablet or a iPad, it doesn't adjust as well. Well, this one is actually, not only is it ADA capable, but it adapts to like 35 languages. It will work on any device. So we hope it'll be pretty fantastic. Now, not to say we won't have some changes to make to it, because once everybody starts banging, on it, of course, we'll find some things probably that we missed.
So are we going to take this out to some elementary school and give that to the kids?
I think it's a
See
good
how they
idea,
do with it?
actually.
We figured if we gave it to the commissioners, it probably.
Well, if we do it to the commissioners and tied to their pay.
The commissioners
they'll never
already
get
have
paid.
the link. You could actually go out and
The
look
kids
at
would
it.
figure it out right away.
It's like,
All right.
yeah,
Okay.
your administrators already have the link if you want to go look at it. So, so on that. So Ross is covering y'all's, but okay. Next thing, GIS has several projects under SPLOS, but one of the first ones we rolled out is the big data. This one is particularly rolled out with the Department of Transportation, and pretty much is getting very close to being finished with the SPLOS portion as far as getting the platform rolled out with the software. One of the first things they did with this was the integration with Waves and the traffic management system, and that's what we presented when we went out to the conference. Was kind of a groundbreaking thing to do with the big data platform. So, and if you go on to the next slide, I think you've seen this from DOT before, but this is that dashboard that was created that DOT is currently using, that at some point will probably go public, but I think they're ironing out all the bugs and want to make sure everything's correct on it. So, next one. This is the new one, so I want to spend a little bit more time on this. The Sheriff's Offender Management System was very old and outdated over at the detention facility. over there. So what we used the SPOS dollars that they had for was to upgrade their offender management system. This is where all the data, it's not on anything that does the physical, keep the jail safe, but this is where all the records for the inmates are stored, whether they're either medical data, where the custody as they move them over to their trials, et cetera. So what we did at that system is basically, we've already purchased the software and the hardware, but we'll be upgrading with them, with a vendor, that system to make it virtual, but also to double the capacity for storage. It basically makes it a robust, redundant backup system that's backed up so that they can do that. Real proud of this one, so. Any questions on that one? Because that one is a new one that you approved. Okay, next one. And then this is that other one that was new that you approved. These are for the things that we print in the county that cannot be sent out for printing, whether either because of dollars they can't or because of the format of the legacy systems that give us our file outputs. Nobody on the outside can take it for anything that's even reasonable in price. So we do those, but that system was so outdated that it was on the edge of breaking. So we were real nervous about it. But we've replaced that. Just about finished with that. We're waiting on the printer. It's back ordered. It comes from a location away. So it is back ordered. But then I think it's overseas, and I think it got hung up in the China trade war. But I didn't want to say it, but anyway. Yeah. So, but the biggie on this one is that even though the system cost us to put in, it'll pretty much pay for itself because our system was so old. The maintenance costs for that annually were atrocious and are high, and we save about $30,000 a year in maintenance costs with this new system because it's now supportable. So with the vendor, okay. This is the access system that we're putting, that we've been putting throughout the buildings in the county to make sure that to get us all up to speed, but also to make sure that we're compatible and eventually we'll only have to use one card. I'll reach for it, it's not there. Eventually have to use one card. That is continuing on. If you'll look, the projects that are coming up there, the next big ones where you'll see we've only spent the $97,000. The police precincts are really the reason we put this one on the SPLOS because all of those systems are old and no longer supportable. We're getting ready to begin that project. It's out to the 3 approved vendors to come back and tell us what it would cost to do all of those. And that's the project you'll be seeing come before you pretty soon, that and water, to upgrade those systems. Go on a little bit further. And these are the ones we've already completed in that area that are that 97,000. Give me a second, okay? That's it. Any questions?
Any questions? Thanks, Sharon.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairman, Commissioners. Y'all wake up now. It's wrong.
Told you. Told you.
So, first on public safety, I'll go over the 2011 monies that were approved there. We have spent those monies and working with finance to reconcile, make sure there's nothing left there. And if so, we'd bring that forward. But that's what we spent the leftover 2011 SPLOS funding on. Our next is our 2016 Spliced Items. And I'll go through where we're at with each one of these items as well. So first is our communications, our radios and police cars. Green checks for those have been purchased. The police cars have been purchased, and the fire station alerting software have all been purchased and in place. The next is 2 animal services vans that have been purchased and are in operation. Next is our 2 police crime scene units that have been purchased and are in operation. Next was the mobile command unit, which is now in place and operational. And our current projects, as Scott Barfield talked about, we're working very closely with property management. Fire Station 29, if Commissioner Ott could find us some property, that'd be really.
Hey, come on, I'm trying it. It's all too expensive. What's that? No, it's the cost. Yeah, we've been close, and we have a couple other places we're looking, but yeah, it's just really, really expensive.
It is, but I joke with Commissioner Idle, he has been working feverishly to help us get some property over in that area, so still looking. Fire station number 1, and we're breaking ground on that one. I'll talk a little bit about that in just a second, as well as fire station 7. So fire station number 1 is Mapleton Parkway, and that station, old Station 1, was built in the 60s. And we had funded in the SPLOST $3.3 million, but the cost came in at 4.4. So we have, with board approval, utilizing the fire fund for that additional 1.4 million. And like Scott said, that ground is already being broken over there. Next is station number 7 at Hurt and Hicks Road.
Hey, Sam?
Yes, sir.
Go back for one slide. I still don't understand why it is that we voted for these projects, you know, in 2014. And we voted for this fire station, right? And we had an estimated cost. But the cost came in $1 million more than what we thought it'd be. Why is it we can't legitimately use SPLOST dollars to pay the delta?
Deborah, do you want to answer that?
I mean, it's an estimate, but the voters approved the projects.
At a certain amount.
Well, the amounts were ROMs.
Right. I mean, they all are estimates when we
That's right. That's my
submit them
point.
to you.
Right. So the idea is to build a firehouse.
I get that. I understand that. But the only way we can go above what was estimated to build that facility is to bring it back to you.
Okay.
And so, let me just finish though. But there are a lot of projects that are underestimated.
Station 29.
Most of
There are a
them,
lot of projects
most of
that
the
are-
projects that I have seen on SPLOST have come in under budget.
Okay.
And I'll bet we have saved $1 million, what we've done just in the time I've been in office. I don't understand why we just don't bring this back to the board and use SPLOST dollars.
So what the practice has been is before we expend revenue above projection is, again, like Commissioner Ott mentioned before, if the economy tanked and you don't bring in the amount of money that you said you were going to bring in the midst of doing projects that are already, in the pipeline, then how do you finish them?
But you don't, you cost out everything before you approve it, okay? So if you don't have the money for it, you're not gonna approve it. You can go out and price out every single project on the SPLOST list that was approved under the referendum, and you don't start building it till the money shows up in our coffers. All I'm saying here is that this goes back to that list I've talked about, 1 to 50. This is project number 14. We finished project 14, and then we move on to project 15, and we don't start building project 15 till the money comes in. If we run out of money before at the end of the 6 years, we don't build projects 47 through 50.
That has not been the practice.
I get that point.
I understand what you're saying.
But what I'm saying
that
is what I'm proposing illegal.
Is what he's
That's my
proposing
question.
illegal.
I'm not sure exactly what you're proposing.
What I'm saying is that the project was approved by the voters. But the list, the project, they all have rough order of magnitude numbers.
Well, I think what the chairman's asking is, if the board approves a project order list, that they will build a project regardless of the cost. So for example, Station 29, the reason it hasn't been built is because the amount of money that was allocated for it has never been available. Because it's way more expensive because there was money for land acquisition and then there was money to build the fire station. So I hear what you're saying, but what happens to these projects, because 29 was a 2011 SPLOST, right?
No, sir, that was in 16.
No, I think it was, no, it's been here forever. I think it's a 2011.
We've been playing since 2005.
And higher.
Well, no, but yeah,
and
but
then
it was, the
29.
reason 30 was built was because 29 was gonna be in the Cumberland area, then there was a downturn, and so.
Correct.
Fire came and said that they didn't need it at that time because the anticipated building didn't happen. And then when the stadium and battery came along and all the anticipated building happened relatively quickly, then there was the need for Station 29.
But it was, this was the first that the SPLOST had anything to do with 29.
Was in 16?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right.
But that gets back, I'm sorry, go ahead.
There are a lot of projects that are underestimated I mean, how long have we been trying to find a police headquarters, evidence storage, and training facility for the 23 million or 50 million or whatever it was for all three? Well, I'm just saying, we estimated too low for some of those things.
But I think Commissioner Burrow brings up a good point, is the fact that if there was no limit to the, or upper limit on a project, then you might build things for more than you could have found them somewhere else.
You might, if this was a board that was profligate in its spending, and it's not. All right, this board watches every single dime, all right? We all know, Sam, that when I first came on, you wanted $100 million of that police day, for that police headquarters and all the training facilities.
That's correct.
I knew that, okay? And we budgeted 50 million, didn't we, or something like that?
23.
23 million,
the
all right.
training.
So the whole thing is that I get the point you're saying, but, you know, you can't get locked into something where, look, $1 million an addition, given where we are right now, and we have this priority list, all right? If we have a priority that's number 12 on the priority list of 50, and I'm just using number 50, then we have to take a look at that. If that priority number 12 comes in $15 million above what we're thinking about, I don't think the board's going to approve it. I find it interesting that for $1 million, given where we have collected and given how old this police station is, there is no question that this police station is worth $4.4 million. Okay?
Yes, sir.
All right. The fire station, I mean. Okay. So the point I'm making is that I think if we can legitimately bring that back and say, yeah, on this case here, we're going to approve the additional revenue. All right. And the reason I bring this up, it goes back to what I said earlier. Virtually every project I have seen here has come in under budget. So we know we have additional revenue out there because we're doing better than we thought we would. And that revenue goes to, if we keep saying public safety is our number one priority, I think no one would have an argument, let's spend another $1 million to build your fire station.
But,
That's
Mr.
my
Chairman,
argument.
I would just remind you that when this board met twice in retreats to try to determine spending priorities for a budget, the 5 members could barely agree on that. And now you're talking about trying to go through SPOS projects and decide, you know, fire can sit here all day long and tell you why we need Station 29, but we don't necessarily need it for $7 million over what it might have, what's budgeted. And so I think, I hear what you're saying, but I think that the practice that's been followed kind of holds everyone's feet to the fire. And yes, some things get delayed and Station 29, and we've had to kind of adapt to it, but I'm concerned that if all of a sudden we just come up with a list and say we're gonna do it in this order, that we're gonna be spending a lot more than we need to.
I get that, which is why, you know, the board discusses these things. I'm just saying that, look, we know we under budgeted resurfacing of roads in this blast, all right? Grossly under budgeted surfacing of roads, all right? These are decisions that were made 2 years ago, 3 years ago now, that as we move the clock forward, this is the new reality. And in this case here, all I'm saying is, for $1.1 million, I don't think this is a leap of faith that we could say to the taxpayer, 1.1, we need a fire station. It came in a little bit higher than we thought it would, all right, $1 million more. But I make a strong argument that we have the revenue for that. That's all I'm saying. We don't have the revenue right now for another $67 million for a police headquarters, all right? But for $1 million, there comes a point where you're being penny wise and pound foolish.
Well, I think one of the most salient points that you're making, Mr. Chairman, is this is the problem with a 6-year SPOS.
Okay.
This is exactly the problem, because here we are with projects that were projected out over 6 years, and we're at year 3, and we want stuff that we want to do, and everybody would agree it's probably needed, but then there's this whole list of other things that are supposed to happen in years 4, 5, and 6. So,
well, I know Randy will be glad is, I just think that something like this, the board, the staff shouldn't feel like they can't bring it to the board and ask. Because if you don't ask, the answer is always no. Okay? And we're the ones that make the decisions. So I'd say something like this, you know, if the staff were to come to me and say, hey, it's budgeted for $3.5 million, but it came in $500,000 higher, to say you're not gonna do that seems ridiculous to me, all right? Given that we're collecting $140 million a year in SPLOST money. All right, and I get the point that we could have tomorrow, the recession could start. I get that point, all right? But we clearly can fund everything that we're bringing forward and asking you to pay for. And I just don't see that $1.1 million for a new fire station, addition for a new fire station, is an unreasonable request, given that this fire station is 50 years old.
So bring it back for a vote.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Well, I mean, as much as I would love to see that happen, and this is in District 4, I'm sure we all have projects, and this kind of gets to Commissioner Ott's point that it kind of opens up Pandora's box.
Yeah.
For instance, I had Old Clarkdale, which burned down, and we found out that there wasn't coverage for it. And that's something which was a SPLOST project and which has challenges in moving forward. And I would love to see that prioritized as well as that community because we voted for it. But as nuances come up every year, we're going to find ourselves jockeying to determine which gets funding. And someone's going to be the loser or some project's going to be the winner. And it's just going to, we're going to go from it's painful now, but I could see it becoming more painful as we try to get.
I'm the only one on the board thinks we're going to have all winners.
Amen. You're so optimistic.
All right, but you get my point, all right? I just think that the staff should have the ability to come, if they feel that, look, we have an argument why we think we should bring this to the board, they shouldn't feel handcuffed to do that. You are all a great staff. You've done
All right, Sam, you
remarkable
heard him,
things.
so let him see the numbers
I
on
don't even want
station
to show, I don't
29.
want to show the next slide.
Well,
And none of our buildings use steel, right? It's cost of steel going up.
I think the county attorney.
And then y'all were talking. Here's the thing, or one or two things. First of all, the SPLOST vote was a vote of the citizens. So that established your list, and you have an obligation to fulfill the list by the citizens. Can you use excess funds designated to finish projects? Yes. So might it also come back on a case-by-case basis? Do these funds exist? Do they exist to be advanced? Do they exist to be used for another project? Yes, and that case-by-case analysis would be appropriate.
And Chairman, I will say that when we brought this agenda item forward, we did ask in the agenda that if there is excess funds collected, that we could then go back and maybe recollect that at the end.
that's a good compromise. All right,
Okay,
that's
that was
smart.
our compromise.
Sure,
on that.
okay, all right.
So now I'm not so afraid to show the next one. Station 7 Hurt and Hicks, it came estimated, and I'll tell you on both of these estimations, our biggest issue was steel prices. The steel prices went to way above. When we took what we had been paying for fire stations and what our neighbors had been paying and actually added a large percentage, we thought we were well within. And then when they started coming in at the steel prices, it went way above. So once again, that one's $1 million, and we did the same thing there. Fire fund will pick that $1 million up, but then it was also in the agenda that if there is excess funds, that we could possibly get that money back. So moving right along. No, I tried. Yes, sir. Well, and that's what we're asking. If there are excess funds that would.
There are on your training center. That's my whole point. We're
Well,
coming in under budget on a lot of these projects, so the money's there.
Well,
Because I have fire stations 12 up on Kent Road.
it's not part of the SPLOST. That one's planned out of operation. Capital.
All right, well, you get my point. So,
Okay. So police headquarters. So we purchased the property at police headquarters, and I think everyone's well aware now the LGE building with their 2-year lease option. But we do think there is some funds left there that we think would help us add security and some fencing and some other things there at that facility once we're able to get in there. Our training center, we are under negotiations with some property, and hopefully we'll have something coming forth at the next meeting to say we're ready to purchase that property as well. And then the airport crash unit has arrived, and we're currently training on that vehicle as well. That's really the top of the state-of-the-art vehicle there. And then projects ongoing, our radio towers, we had 3 towers in the SPLOST. The Camp Highland is completed and operational. We're getting good reviews from Smyrna, particularly. It was dead spot over by the river. Mile marker 281 is up toward Bartow County. It's been approved by the board now, and then Austell area has also been approved. Both of those are unique in that we're not paying for the tower itself. Our neighbors are paying for that, and we're paying for the equipment to go on it, but still coming in within budget. Our police precinct renovations, office space being designed for some of the precincts. Our fitness centers, and 2 of them are being reworked, waiting on the contractors there. Security fencing for precincts 2 and precinct 4 are installed, and precinct 5 is scheduled. New AV equipment for all locations are scheduled for mid-October, and we're working the Six Flags substation, the little offices down at station number 9 that was in place, and that's under construction now. So that completes my list. Any questions? Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Go ahead. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, Deputy County Manager. We've got a report for you today on the parks projects in Spliced. 2011 Spliced, we're at 97% complete with 1% construction underway, which is our admin complex, and then 2% still in the design engineering process. In our 16 Spliced, we have 49% completed already. We have 22% of that is under construction, design engineering, and then future projects. We're well underway to making headway on the 16 Spliced. The first one that we'd like to show you is Price Park, located on Stilesboro Road. It is a passive area. It's 110 acres on the south side of Stilesboro. We've since purchased another 120 acres on the north side of Stilesboro, so it's going to be a great passive park. But there was no restroom facility, so we went in and put in a restroom facility and pavilion for $448,000. It is complete, and if we go to the next slide, it will show you the other aspect of it. The original entrance is the one that's on the top right of your picture. And the problem we were having, it was ingress and egress, and the line of sight coming from Mars Hill Road was not good. So you had cars turning out to go eastbound on Stilesboro and getting almost rear-ended. So what we've done now is we have an ingress on the top and then an egress on the bottom, and it's much safer. We'd like to thank DOT for helping us out with the engineering on that. The second one is Green Meadows Preserve, located on Dallas Highway. We'll be adding this restroom facility as well as parking for the community garden and all the trails at Green Meadows Preserve. This is another shot that shows the pervious concrete that'll be used for the parking area. The entrance will also be coming in off Old Hamilton instead of turning off of Dallas Highway. There is no turn lane on Dallas Highway. They're across from the Freddy's. So we'll have folks coming in off of Old Hamilton that'll make that much safer. You'll see in a few moments, we'll talk about the renovation of the old house, but that is supposed to start in the fall as well. Mabry Park, located on Wesley Chapel, just off Sandy Plains. This project is about 60% complete now. This is the restroom/maintenance building located on the property. ICANN is our contractor at $2.8 million. This is one aerial that shows one of the pervious concrete parking lots. And then on the bottom right, you'll see a series of walls that'll be for folks to sit on, but it's also serving as the piping to drain off the water from the pervious concrete. This is from the other side. The area where behind the cement truck is where the playground will go that you approved a couple of meetings ago. You'll see several pods of picnic shelters, and then that sidewalk also leads off into the woods for all of the trails. This is the playground that was actually approved. It's a very innovative playground in that it's Mabry, the Mabry Farm concept. It'll be labeled as Mabry Farm. It'll have 3 different types of playground surfacing. The large green area in the middle will be synthetic turf, then the engineered fiber, and where you see the brown, and then the poured in place rubber underneath the swings, which will lower the maintenance cost on that. Mabel House Barns Amphitheater seating. This project will begin immediately following the last performance this year. First, we showed you a picture of what it's going to look like. This is Southern Ground Amphitheater. We used their specifications whenever we were developing this, but this shows how it will lay in on the Mabel House. You'll see the tiered seating in the middle, looking at the drawing on the left, and then there's boxes. There's 4 on the left side and 2 on the right. Right, there's the 4 on the left and 2 on the right, where businesses, families can pay for the booths, as well as the tiered seating. Tiered seating is wide enough that you can bring your own chair, your TV tray, and there's still room for people to walk in front of you. So it's 6 foot wide.
Hey, Jimmy?
Yes, sir.
Is that going to be dirt, turf, or is it?
Synthetic turf.
So it'll be similar to what's over at Sawmill?
Exactly.
Okay.
Just
good.
like that. It will increase our capacity a tad, but it will also allow us to increase our revenue, because we will now have sellable seats instead of just for your blanket ticket price, go up and sit on the lawn. So we're excited about this project. It'll be ready before next spring season. Our new headquarters building on County Services Parkway, it's probably 99% done now. We're planning to start putting the furniture together this week, with staff moving in the first week of October. This is an aerial shot. That's the large building up front next to County Services. The linear building behind it is the inventory control building, where we purchase bulk supplies, and then everyone out in the parks places their order for cleaning materials, toilet paper, trifold towels, things like that. They actually place their orders and then come in and pick their orders up there. And then the building on the top right is our small engine shop that does all of the small engine repair for anything smaller than a tractor in the county. But we're really excited about our building. This first picture is a shot looking back out at County Services. That's the jail over across the street. With 43 people moving into the building, we did have to utilize cubicle space, but they're real nice built-in workspaces. All right, the next project is the event center. We're pretty proud of this one. It was done just in time for the fair to get started. Reeves Young was our contractor. TVS designed it at $13.2 million. This first picture is one of the corridor. On the right are all the staff offices, conference room, and event offices. And then on the left are all the large exhibit halls. This is a picture of the exhibit halls with one of the partition walls about half done, just so people could see what it looks like. There's a fine group of people right there holding the large scissors. They did a great job. They didn't cut anybody's finger off, so we're proud of them there. But that was a great day of of cutting the ribbon on that one. And then this is just a nice night picture. I'm sorry, a very morning picture. Our drone expert went out early one morning to get that picture. Just a couple of housekeeping items. Acworth joint project. We contributed $8.5 million to their community center. That construction's underway. Kennesaw's Recreation Center, we're working with them to help them establish scope on theirs. Old Clarkdale Park, the RFQ for engineering design is out now, and we'll be getting those in very soon. Green Meadows Preserve, we talked about the house beginning, the historic house rehabilitation. The Hyde Farm Agricultural Complex, the design's about 60% complete. We'll be bringing that back to you soon. The Discovery Boulevard property design engineering, that's also underway. It'll be coming back soon. Our signage and wayfinding, same thing, and then a couple of additional paving projects. So, any questions?
Not a question, but a comment.
Okay.
I was out of town for the ribbon cutting of the exhibit hall,
Should have been there.
and so I hadn't seen it, but I went to the fair Friday night. It is magnificent.
Pretty nice.
I just worked with GOP. But it's really nice.
Thank you. It
And,
is,
you know, I thought when it was under renovation and we moved everything to the Civic Center, which was recently renovated and gorgeous too, that people would stay at the Civic Center, but they're coming back to the exhibit
We have
hall.
heard that from several of the groups that were displaced for their time. They all said they really like the Civic Center, but once they're getting back out there, they're saying, we'll be back. So, thank you.
So, this is gonna be the Department of Transportation's update to the board. The first slide is concerning the 2011 Spliced. We had 205 transportation projects in that Spliced. We're almost 95% complete. Actually, we have completed 194. We have 6 in construction and 5 in design. And this is a map of the projects in the county that are, the 5 in design are in green. I'm sure you can't see that right now, but, and then the 6 are in construction, and they're dispersed throughout the county. Those projects are Riverview Road. We have Gordon Combs Road sidewalks, McCullen Parkway sidewalks, Lower Roswell Road, and Woodlawn Drive sidewalks. Projects in the construction phase are Cobb Parkway at Windy Hill Road, Cobb Parkway Corridor Q Jumper Lanes, Cobb Parkway at Dallas Acworth Highway, Irwin Road sidewalks, Sandy Plains Road, and then Shallowford Road sidewalks. And these are just some of the highlights in the 2011 Spliced. This is Cobb Parkway at Windy Hill Road. This was a pretty large project. It was awarded to Baldwin Paving. It was a $5.3 million project. The project should be completed later this year. The next project is Sandy Plains Road, and right now there's some lane closures going on for some utility work out there. But this contractor is C.W. Matthews, and the contract was $4.44 million, and we hope to have this one completed in the fall of 2019. This project is South Barrett Reliever Phase 2, which is recently open and completed in August of this year. The contractor was C.W. Matthews. It was $5.4 million, and we had a partnership with Town Center CID. And we are moving forward with Phase 3 of the South Barrett Reliever and design. So this is our 2016 Spliced. We have 210 transportation projects, and to date we have completed about 33% of those, or 70 of the 210 projects. We have 19 in construction and 78 in design. So this is, again, just a map of where they're dispersed throughout the county. And I'm not going to read these, but these are the 78 projects that we have in design over the next few slides. And then, yes, ma'am. And then we have 19 that are actually in the construction phase. So we'll, once we get through that. So this is one of the projects that are in under design right now. This is Jim Owens Road at Acworth Due West and Mars Hill Church Roads. This is the construction of a roundabout. It'll be the removal of an all-way stop control intersection. And we are coordinating with the Cobb County School District on this project for Lewis Elementary School. And this we're scheduled to go to construction in spring of 2019, and it should take between 15 and 18 months to complete. This project is Beach Haven Trail Sidewalk. This will be the addition of sidewalk to fill in the gap on the east side of Beach Haven Trail between Cumberland Parkway and Log Cabin Drive. We're in design, right-of-way is close to being completed, and it's scheduled to let to construction probably the end of October, and we anticipate construction lasting through December of 2019. The next project we wanted to highlight was Blackwell Road at Autumn Ridge Parkway. This intersection improvement will be the removal of an all-way stop controlled intersection to help alleviate sight distance issues, and then to also install some pedestrian improvements. We're in the final stages of design, and we are in the right-of-way acquisition phase also. We're hoping to let this to construction in October of 2018, and it'll take between a year and 15 months to complete also. Then this project is Hicks Road at Concord Road. This will be the addition, it's an intersection improvement with the addition of turn lanes, a traffic signal modification, and pedestrian improvements. We're in the final design phase, and we're in the middle, almost complete with right-of-way purchase acquisition. And we plan to go to construction in spring of 2019 and are looking at a year to 15 months for construction on this project. And then this project is our old 41 highway over CSX Railroad. And this is a bridge replacement, and it's a joint project with the city of Marietta. We're in final plans, final design, and then right-of-way acquisition is in progress. And we are in the middle of coordination with CSX Railroad, and we're scheduled to go to construction in 2019, and it'll probably take us a year and a half for construction on this project. So this project just recently let to construction. This is the Macedonian Bridge over Noses Creek. We awarded it September 11th. Contractor's Baldwin Paving. We are expecting the closure of the road later this month, and it should be a 90-day road closure traffic detour. And we coordinated with the school system to verify that buses wouldn't be impacted too severely. And we only have given the contractor 150 days to get this project completed. Our next project is Old Highway 41 at Main Street in Acworth, and this was a roadway safety and operational improvement between Nance Road and Nolan Road. There is minor roadway widening, intersection improvements, and pedestrian improvements. This project is joint with the city of Acworth, and we coordinated with North Cobb High School. The contractor is Glosson Enterprises, and we began construction in June of 2018. This project actually began with some of the utility relocations, and construction on the roadway part should be happening fairly soon. This project is West Side Drive. This is a pretty big project. We're construction of a roundabout at the intersection of West Side Drive and Sandtown Road, and we're widening and realignment of West Side Drive. There's pedestrian improvements and a new traffic signal installation. The contractor's Baldwin Paving. We had to coordinate with Chattahoochee Technical College on this project. So it's ongoing, and construction began in July, and it should take around a year to complete. This project is Castile Road Bridge over Piney Grove Creek as a bridge replacement project. The contractor was Tidwell Construction. We began the summer 2018 with the road closure, and bridge was reopened in August of 18, and project should be final and completely closed out in November of 2018. So this is our east-west connector sidewalk project. This was the addition of some sidewalks to fill in the gaps on both sides of east-west connector between Traymar Park and Champion Drive, Mesa Valley Way. The contractor was Chatfield Contracting, and it was $164,000, and it was substantially complete in August of 2018. This project was Powder Springs Road sidewalk, and it was a fill in the gaps also on the west side of Powder Springs Road between Whitehaven Drive and Horseshoe Bend. The contractor was D&H Construction, and the project was substantially complete in September of 2018. So this is some of our resurfacing highlights. The 2011 Spliced, we completed 18 contracts, around almost $101 million. It was just over 1,400 roads, 467 miles. And then in our 2016 Spliced, we've had 8 contracts valued at $45.6 million. 5 contracts have been completed to date, which with the 2016 Spliced, we have resurfaced 471 roads, or around 168 miles. So project highlights for the 18 calendar resurfacing contracts. The 2018 one, we had $5.5 million funds from Georgia DOT. That was 17 roads, $9.7 million. Contracting began in March of 2018 with C.W. Matthews, and we have resurfaced 95% of that project is complete. The 2018-2 Local Road South, we had 71 roads, which was $3.4 million, which Baldwin was the contractor on that, and we're almost 75% complete. In our 2018-3 Local Roads North, we had 70 roads, $3.4 million contracted in August of 2018 with Bartow Paving, and we're about 25% complete. And moving forward, our next quarter, we have 8 projects to be completed. There's a sidewalk project, 5 drainage, and 2 resurfacing projects. We have 20 new construction starts. We expect 4 drainage projects, 3 sidewalks, 10 bridge projects, 1 roadway project, and 2 intersection projects. And we'll have 4 in design or engineering starts, which are 2 drainage projects, 2 drainage projects, and 2 sidewalk projects. We do, yeah. Okay, thank you.